So we're going to start making what I call the basic page, even though we've done a little bit in the prior videos, kind of setting up Bootstrap 3. Bootstrap 3, again, is a grid system. It's an industry standard. We're going to be using it throughout the whole semester in Web 2. I really like it. I don't know everything about it, but I don't think you really can, because there's so many different class names that Bootstrap uses for different specific things that we'll kind of get into as the semester progresses. But right now, if you'll see on your screen, you'll see a page, what I call the basic page. We have, in Bootstrap, I can't reiterate enough that it's all built with containers and rows, and then breaking those rows up into columns. That's all it is. And you decide as a web designer, hey, I'm going to design this web page. You first want to design it on a blank sheet of paper, and then look at that design and code to that design, rather than start the coding and decide what it's going to look like as you're coding. You always want to start with the design first and then code to the design. So again, you'll hear me say that repeatedly. So I have a large heading, an H1 tag, on a row in a container, and it's column 12. So that means, again, in the Bootstrap system, it's based on 12. So there are 12 possible columns that span across a row. If you want something that spans all the way across the row, you say container or column 12. So we're going to build this. And then I have another row that has 3 columns, 4, 4, 4, again, it equals 12, with paragraphs and subheadings in them. And then I have, below that, I have another row of a column 6 here and a column 6 here. And then I added some CSS. I'll have you add your own CSS to this to kind of stylize the page. All right, so here we go. So I'm going to go into Text Wrangler, and I have a clean template. And a template, what I mean is, it's already set up with the connection to the folders CSS that Bootstrap gives you, because we have to connect to this right here. So I have a web page, and right where this web page is, this HTML page called Clean Template, there's a folder called CSS, and inside of it there's a file called bootstrap.min.css. So we're tying to that, we're linking to that, and that's going to make the column and the row system work. Okay, and then I have a separate style sheet, again in the same folder called CSS, and it's called firstfullpage.css. Now again, I haven't added too much to that, but I have it connected, ready to go. And then there's one more thing you have to do. Here's my body tag with nothing in it. But in the template CSS, the HTML file for Bootstrap that we'll create, and we'll try to use this all the time. These are easy to make. Below this, I tie to what's called the jQuery minimum file, and it's found on a website. Okay? So it looks for this website, and it looks for this file and kind of loads it and talks to it. And then there is another folder where that CSS folder was that we connected to up here. Again, wherever this web page is, there's a folder called JS, and inside that JS folder we're going to connect to this file, and that's going to make, eventually, when we're using jQuery, that's going to make like our navigation work. That's going to make our maybe what's called reveal hide paragraph work that we'll get into later. So even though we're not going to use this, you still want to get it all set up to connect it. Okay? So again, it's all connected. If I go, there's my file that I'm working on, Text Wrangler. Here's that CSS folder, and here is that JS folder. Now I have other folders too that we're not going to use right now, but we will eventually. Okay? So off we go. So again, container, row, columns. And we decide as web designers how we want to do this. So I'm going to create a div And again, the class name is how this thing works. So class equals container. And that's the overall like big box holding everything. And I can go down here and I'm going to close off the container. Yeah, div. Okay, so that's going to close off the big container. Now, here's the thing. In this class, I want you to make comments of what things are closing and opening and whatever, mainly closing. And you can really call it whatever you want, but the more you know that this closing div goes with this open container, the better. Because it's going to get confusing later on where we're what are called nesting. We're nesting columns and rows inside other rows and columns. And it can get really confusing about what stops what, you know. And you'll kind of scratch your head. So you just want to keep organized with all this. So we have a big container. Now I'm going to make another div inside that container. Again, you make a container, then you make a row, and you have so many rows that go horizontally across the page in that container. So our first one is going to be row. What am I missing here? The word class. Okay. And again, I'm going to go down a couple of times and close this off. Now, I don't have to make a comment, but I can. I'm going to. Okay, so that's our first row. Now, if we look at our design, we have a large heading here, and that's the only thing in that row. So again, what that means is we're going to have that heading in a column 12. And again, the row can span across 12 columns, and you can break it up. If you want something to expand all the way across the row, just that single thing, that's in a column 12. Okay? So I'll go back to my coding, and I'll say, okay, what I've decided, what my design says is this. Call dash. Now here's there are a number of what are called breakpoints when the device width gets to a certain device width. Let's say a smartphone or a tablet. You can tell it when to collapse. So if you have so many columns, they're going to collapse on top of each other from left to right, and we can decide when that collapse is going to take place. You have 4 types. You have LG, MD for medium, SM for small, and XS for extra small. Okay? I like to use typically MD or SM. We're going to use SM. So it's call-SM, and then how many columns? 12. Okay? And again, I'm going to hit the return key, close off the div. Okay? And then I'm going to put a large heading, again, H1, inside that first column and first row. Sorry. Okay, so I'm going to save it and then look at it, and you won't see much. Okay, so there it is right there. Now again, you can't really tell that it spans all the way across, but you will eventually. Now, that's our first row. Okay? Now here's the thing. I can, if I want, save some time. Save some time and copy this first row. Now again, I'm going to stay inside the container. The container is the big box that's holding all this. I'm going to put my cursor down below, and it doesn't matter how much empty space, white space you have in coding, it's not going to read it. And sometimes visually I like it because it's easier for me to, figure out where things are. So I like to keep my rows a little separate. Okay? So I'm going to paste it. Now again, I'm going to say instead of the first row, I'm going to change the comment to second row. Okay? Now, we're going to do, instead of a col 12, if you look at the design, right here, we have 3 columns, 1, 2, and 3. And so that means if the column, which the whole row is broken into 3 parts, and it has to equal 12, this is 4, 4, and 4. Okay? And we have a subheading, probably an H3 or something. I'll say H3 tag. And then we have some Latin text. Okay? And I've given a class name to this paragraph tag of Latin text called lead. And it kind of makes it nice and readable. Very clean font. Okay? So I did that. So I'll show you how to do that. So right now, let me pan down here, tilt down. We have a column 12, and what we need is a column 4. And instead of a column, an H1, we're going to do an H3 tag. And I'll just say the word subheading. Okay? Now here's the closing div for that column. But also we have a paragraph of Latin text. So I'm going to open and close the P tags. Okay? And then I'm going to go to our wonderful friend at lipsum.com. I have it open right here. And if you go, this is the Latin text generator. And then I'm going to go back to our coding, and I'm going to paste in some Latin text right here. Now, I'm going to save this and then show you what this looks like. Okay, so there's our 1 column. Again, we need 2 more here to fill up the whole row. And then once we fill up the whole row, we can stop the row and start another row. Okay? But notice the text. Notice how small it is. Now, I can talk to this text with our style sheet, and I can talk to the paragraph tag, and I can change it however I want. Let me show you some really quick trick that Bootstrap assists us with some class names to stylize paragraph text. So it's class equals lead. And then if I do that, Bootstrap will see that word lead, the class name lead, and instantly kind of make it cleanable. Now I can add, again, even though it's going to make it readable, I can go, I'm going to update it, I can go and still talk to this text and change the font size, change the color. I can do whatever I want and still keep this idea of this lead text. So I can add on to the styling and look of this paragraph text, even though I'm using this specific class name. We can add things to that class name without changing this. Okay? Just want to let you know. Now, I have 1 column of 4. Again, I need 3 because it has to add up to 12. So we have 4. And I'm going to hit the return key. There's our second one. There's our third one. So now I have 3 columns. What I did was I copied the column 4 with everything in it, and I put it inside before the row closed. Here's the closing of the second row. So I have 3 columns, 4, 4, 4, that open up and equal to 12. And then once I filled up the row, I have to close the row and start another row. And notice I'm inside the container. I'm still inside that big container. Okay, so I'm going to save it. I'm going to update it. And there it is. Okay? And we really haven't stylized it at all. I mean, we've done something with the text, but that's about it. So let's go. We're going to add to this really quick here. I'm going to start another row. And again, I'm inside the container still, and I'll make comments, and it's the angle bracket, exclamation point, dash dash, and then my comment. And then you dash dash angle bracket to stop it. And notice it's grayed out. Okay? So you know it's a comment. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 columns of 6. Again, it has to equal 12 to fill up the row. Div class equals our word call and then a dash. And then again, I can decide when this thing's going to break. I'm going to say SM again, dash 6. And that's how many columns it's going to take up of the possible 12. Okay? And then I'm going to put in just a subheading here, H3. We'll do H3 again. And I'll say this is the left side. Okay? Because this is going to go on the left side. Remember, in HTML, it's in sequential order from top to bottom. So this is the first column, the first 6, column 6. And that's going to go on the left side of that row. I'm going to copy this. And again, I'm going to stay inside this row because I have to fill it up. So it's column 6 and column 6. Again, it equals 12. And then I'm going to say this is the right side. So I've added to another row, and then I've added columns that equal 12 of 6 and 6. So it's going to be half and half. And then I'm going to update this. And there we go. Okay. Now to give this structure, I'm going to create a style sheet and talk to this left side and right side. So I've already connected to something that I called first full page. Okay. So let me go to first full page. And this is what I did. I have a class name called left side that I'm doing something with. And then I have a class name called right side. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go down. Oh, sorry. That's the finished one. So I'm going to go down here. And what I can do is, notice I have my cursor. We already have a class name, but with a space in between or after this class name of call-sm-6, and Bootstrap recognizes that name and does something with it because of that. I can hit the space bar. Notice I'm inside the quotation mark. I'm going to say left underscore side. So now I have 2 class names that are working separately from each other. This is a class name that Bootstrap recognizes. This is a class name where I can stylize this column. Okay? And then I'm going to go down here again, stay within the quotation mark, hit the space bar, and then say right underscore side. I like underscores because computers have issues with empty spaces. Okay? And again, this we have 2 class names doing different things. We have this class name, which Bootstrap recognizes and makes this a column 6. And then we have this class name that I made up that I can stylize this column 6 here. And what I've done is, in my separate style sheet that I'm linked to, I made a background color, and then I gave it extra padding. And if you remember padding in Web 1, padding is empty space inside of an element. Margin is empty space outside of an element. So this is going to create some empty space and make this column 6 larger, okay, on the bottom. Kind of make it thicker and fuller. So if I go here, notice there's no, at the bottom of my page here, if you can see that, there's no definition at all. Now, because of my class names and my styling, I've created some depth to it and just colored it just to kind of show you kind of where it is. All right? So that is our first basic page. All right? Congrats.